introduce real quickly. Sean Juroviesky? Juroviesky? Close, hopefully. Senior Security Engineer for SoundCloud. He's an expert on identity access management, a backpacker, and an Air Force veteran.
Hey everyone. So this talk is hacking other teams using social skills in order to strengthen your identity access management program. So, who am I? As he just said, I'm Sean. There's an additional photo of me over there in case you can't get enough of me right here. I am a senior security engineer at SoundCloud, and the content and opinions of this presentation are my own, not those of my employer. So, you're probably asking, why am I lecturing you about IAM? And is it because I've done way too much of it? So I started my career at an MSP's Network Operations Center. We had a very creative COO who would sell just about any vaguely technology-related service to anyone he could. So our Network Operations Center was doing everything from monitoring networks, ensuring they remain, online, troubleshooting if they do not, doing basic help desk support, doing systems administration, doing database administration. While I was there, we had 12 different customers, and everyone's identity access management program, even if no one called it that at the time, was completely different. Then thought I learned a lot, went to an art museum and saw, access here is a mess. And this art museum, as nonprofits typically are, was behind. We had about 6 months until the end of life of Windows 7, and everything was running Windows 7. The former director of IT, who left about a year before I got there, so 1.5 years before Windows 7 was end of life, was imaging new laptops from Windows 10 to Windows 7. So as you can imagine, their programs were a mess. So throughout my time there, I clicked a button. There we go. Throughout my time there, I migrated them over to Office 365 because, don't know if you know this, but Microsoft actually gives nonprofits 350 free seats in Office 365 and Azure AD, which is really awesome of them. So being a small shop, we were able to get out of physical servers onto the cloud with no cost, no having to worry about replacing hardware, which is pretty neat. Then we also had an after-school program that was also running on-prem, Exchange, AD, all of that good stuff. The students hate Office, they hate Exchange, so we migrated them to Google Workspace because they offer the same deal. So I learned a ton about managing all of that migration, managing communication between those two domains, and everything like that. And then I moved over to a marketing firm, and it was awful. Marketing firms and marketing technology platforms just want to place ads and get money. They don't really do access management. And you'd think Google Ads, one of the biggest ad platforms in the entire world, would know something about identity access management since they own their own identity platform. That's a major product that they sell. Nope, not integrated in any meaningful manner into Google Ads. And not only that, when I had gotten there, they had a cap on the amount of accounts someone can be added to. So if you're a marketer and you have 12 clients, that's fine, they can add you to their accounts. If they can't, if you have 13, then you can't get added to the 13th account. So what do staff do? Do they talk to IT, security, anyone? No, they go out and create their own Gmail account. And what I learned in marketing is this is standard practice. There are a ton of firms just going and doing that. Google has since lifted that cap. They've gotten a little bit better. Not as good as you think they should, considering they own an identity platform, but still, improvement is improvement. Facebook has recently introduced SSO this past year, which is incredible for their backend. But just a couple years ago, there was no way of even ensuring that your staff who are using their personal Facebook accounts, because Facebook says one person, one account, so you can't go and create on the business platform side an additional account. You have to tie it directly to your identity. There was no way of ensuring that MFA was enabled on Facebook, a multi-billion dollar platform that's ad-driven. So, that's a bit about my background, and now we're going to preface the rest of this presentation with some mindsets that I think are ideal to keep throughout the presentation. So, IAM is a human problem, and it requires us to be humans in order to help solve it. So, there's also no magic here. There's no magic. It's going to require custom solutions, custom time, and human interaction. So, first things first, actually getting into an IAM program. What is identity access management? There's all kinds of definitions that are fairly broad, but I like to tackle it by saying it's a holistic approach to managing access to all of your information resources. And this is a lot broader than people typically realize it is. I typically break it down into 3 types of access: inherent, employee-initiated, or shadow IT, and externally initiated. So, what is inherent access? Inherent starts with birthright access. What does every employee get when they start on day 1? And what do they actually get access to with that inherent basic level of access? Are there being drives overshared? Are you sharing things at a higher level in your OU structure than they should be? Is that broken out by contractors? Are contractors also getting that access? Are you differentiating contractor accounts on some sort of level? All of those things need to be accounted for and itemized so you can get a picture of what access you're actually giving. And then what access is being given by groups and OUs, and how high of a level is it? Is that access being provisioned to all of marketing, when really it should just be one team? Is that access being provisioned to all of engineers, and you're giving all of your devs admin access to GitHub? Should that be at a lower level? Or are you just doing broad, vague structures based on what organization they're in? The next category is employee-initiated access, often called shadow IT. Staff can go out and create accounts because they have an email address, and most services just let you sign up and start sharing data. So these are going to be all of those accounts. And then that situation gets significantly worse if they also have a company card and they can just start running up costs, purchasing software without telling you about it. What applications have all these staff onboarded and not told you or even their managers about, because it's not that important. It's, writing my code for me. Security doesn't need to review that, right, guys? And then this is also going to include software that you officially use, that you know about, but you actually don't know the extent of it. Sure, this one team has a bunch of licenses, you know about it, SSO's enabled, and you think SSO's enabled, that's great. There's domain capture, they can't sign up. Nope. A couple years ago, DocuSign came to me and told me I had 32 DocuSign organizations because staff just went out and purchased DocuSign, or they just went and used DocuSign, and they were passing confidential information, service agreements, all sorts of different things in accounts that had no multi-factor authentication. I thought, that's not possible. We have SSO. Nope, in order to lock down your domain with DocuSign, you have to go from the premium plan to the enterprise plan. What's the point of SSO if it doesn't do domain capture? I don't know. So, the last category is going to be externally initiated access. So these are things that clients or vendors are giving your staff. So things like clients creating email addresses because your staff are maybe contractors with them and they're giving them accounts on their domain. And then what services are all of those accounts accessing? Are they giving that access because they're not contractors, but they need access to some kind of internally hosted application? Something like that. So it's best to inventory that, get a full in-depth picture of that. And then this is also going to include cloud services that they're giving to your staff's proper, your organizational domain accounts. Things like Snowflake, Google, all sorts of things like that. And then the final category is going to be vendor-initiated access. Stuff like ServiceNow that your staff are signing up for and creating accounts in the client's domain or in the client's services so they can, get normal support for services that you're aware of. But you didn't actually know that they're using this ticketing platform, they're not using MFA on this platform, and they're passing tokens to the vendor that haven't been rotated since it's been troubleshot. And then you also have fun things like maybe you migrated payroll services from one vendor to another. Maybe you have a contracting firm doing that, and maybe that contracting firm is using software like MoveIt to move really, really classified, important, vital information at the height of the MoveIt breach. Ask me how I know. So this is going to be an ongoing process. This isn't going to be a single project. IAM is a permanent part of your security program. We've always had it, we've just not always used this term for it. Also, even if you automate part of it, you'll need to keep it alive because your company is going to change, your company is going to grow, roles are going to change, you're going to onboard and offboard clients, which includes life cycling through software, and then just needs are going to change in general. So, things to keep in mind as you go through this project. Staff, in the end, are human. They just want to do their job. They see us as an obstacle. They don't want to change how they do things. And while modern tools can offer some convenience, it's going to take a long time to actually get that buy-in. So, we are an obstacle, right? A lot of the time, we see risk and we just shut it down. We don't actually evaluate it. We act a bit as a roadblock. And even when we're doing things properly, we are adding extra steps and making people's lives a little bit more difficult. Extra steps like telling us before you purchase software. Minor things like that. So they don't want to change their workflow. They don't want to go out, learn a new tool. They don't want to alter what they're doing because they have deadlines. They're short-staffed. They're under pressure to get things out. So if you add tools to their workflow, it's going to delay them. So you might say that this will improve your workflow. This will make things faster. It will, it may, but that's going to be a long-term process as this change happens and as they learn these tools. Practice makes perfect. That's why this is going to be a long-term process, and you're going to need to maintain a long-term outlook because they're going to have to learn these tools, and that's going to cut down. They're going to say, oh, tried to go the old way, remembered in the middle, hit a roadblock, and now I have to alter what I'm doing in order to keep going. Patience is a virtue. That's why you need to maintain long-term outlooks and be tolerant and patient. And you'll want to go through in-depth training that staff actually understand. You're going to want to call out specifically the tools and processes that will be changing and show them in platforms that they work in on a daily basis, because that helps add an additional human element to it. It helps give them a direct view into how it's going to impact them, and it helps the training sink in a little bit better. So, as you're going through the project, the first thing you're going to want to do is establish the baseline. What do you have? You're going to work with every team from as many departments as possible. Managers are probably not going to know what they're actually using a lot of the time, and then this is going to be really old school and really manual. Throughout this process, you're also going to want to be documenting every single bit of information you can, especially things like what access controls do these platforms have, SSO, MFA, etc. So working with every team to get as complete a picture as you possibly can. Managers probably don't know every tool their staff are using because companies change, teams change. Maybe this team was once 4 teams and this manager is just a people manager. They know what metrics their staff need to hit, but they don't know how their staff are hitting those metrics. So it's not going to be department by department because each team is going to have slightly different things. You're going to want to figure out the most basic level as software splits and roles change. And you're going to want to seek out staff who train and onboard new hires, because the trainers are really the team leads. They're going to have the most current and up-to-date information on what platforms you're actually using on a daily basis. They're going to know, oh, this one client requires this one weird trick. They're going to have all of these tools and gotchas and little tidbits of information that are going to help you along the way. So this is old school. This is going to be you in Excel actually talking to people time and time again. You're going to want to sit down with them in person or over Zoom and actually have in-depth conversations in order to get a really accurate view. Staff aren't purposely negligent. They're not being malicious most of the time. They're forgetful. They don't remember what software they use for this one client or this one situation because it happens once a month, once a quarter, once a year. They're going to forget. So as you go through this process, as you practice and learn these skills, you're going to develop strategic questions that you'll want to ask, like, I notice that in this tool, it seems like maybe the process could change if the scenario is different. What happens then? Do you still use this software? Do you use another software? Strategic questions like that. Then you're going to want to notate each authentication option that software has. Can it do MFA, OIDC, SAML, etc.? Or the minimums or the maximums, all of those different things. You're going to want to figure out who owns these services. Is it you? Is it this team? Is it a different team that this team has to go out and get access provisioned to them by this other team every single time? And then you also want to see the pricing tiers of all these different features. Is SSO price tiered? You need to upgrade the amount of licenses you have or to a higher tier plan in order to get SSO. So are you going to start with MFA and then try and justify that budget next year? These are all sorts of questions that you need to ask throughout this process and notate. You're going to want to take really, really extensive notes throughout this process because they're going to help you now and they're going to really help you later in 6 months, in a year, when you start doing different things and you forget what your reasoning is. You don't want to go and do all these interviews again. So, throughout the process, you're going to want to take a kind approach. You're going to want to recognize shortcomings. You're going to want to know that this is going to be arduous and painful, and then you're going to want to establish what the life cycle of each role entails and take really extensive notes on that. And then you also want to find staff's biggest pain points and fix a couple of those first. We all have shortcomings, right? And it's mutual. Do you really want to tell these staff that the shortcomings are mutual? Or do you just want to get some brownie points and say, yeah, we probably could have done things a little bit better? You're going to want to commit to fixing a couple things. You're going to want to listen to staff and ensure that you understand how these shortcomings happen, where their pain points are, because these pain points are going to give you clues to things that are probably ideal options to automate. And then you're going to want to be open to suggestions because you don't know these tools. These staff are using these tools on a daily basis, and do you really want to spend all the time or learning this tool, or do you just want to take some suggestions and say, we can't do that. That's a terrible idea, but that actually gives me another idea. So, arduous, painful, lengthy, it's a problem. And this is a remediation. This is not a new problem. Like I said, you have identity access management at your company. Everyone has IAM. You probably just don't call it that, or if you do, maybe it's not quite in the state, or maybe you're an expert on this and you're just here to support me, right? So patience is a virtue. You're going to want to keep the end goals in mind throughout this process, and you're going to find fires, and you'll have to evaluate, is this an instant? Is this fire really actually important? Or do I just want to notate that this is on fire and move on? Because you want to get to the end stage of this project, because you might realize that's not actually a fire. We're dumping that software. We have 12 instances of that software. So you actually want to know what you're going to do to evaluate if it's actually a fire. So let's define role-based access controls. A lot of this project is going to be building out what roles and responsibilities your company has. So the reason why you want to use role-based access, and the reason why you want to minimize access to just what staff need in order to do their job, is because during a breach, it minimizes what information can be stolen if a single account is hacked, and then it's also going to make it more difficult for an attacker to pivot if access is just limited to what the employee needs access to. And then it's going to be a really, really long process to figure out what staff actually need access to, because we've all signed the contracts that say "and other duties as assigned." So what are staff actually doing that's actually in their role, but not well defined, not frequent, all these little asterisks that you're going to want to take notes on. So you're going to want to take all of that RBAC and establish what access looks like throughout the company. You're going to want to start with the most basic role and define what any employee, any contractor needs, and then you're going to want to build it out department, by specialization, by seniority, and everything like that. And like I said, arduous, lengthy, terrible. And then you're also going to want to document just what the flow of this looks like, when these specializations occur, and what determines that, so that you can build out pretty cool automations like, oh, we have Salesforce. Salesforce says you're no longer on this client, you're on this client, so the automation's gonna go switch you over, change all your distribution lists, all the fun stuff like that. So you're also gonna want to establish your trust level. If you can't get SSO, if you can't create all these automations, or if it's not justifiable because it's a small tool, a small platform, you're going to want to figure out how much you trust the staff, what the risk is of this platform, and who do you want to have admin access to this. And you're going to want to take extensive notes on who you're giving this to and why, because maybe it's a small platform, so it's not worth it to spend 20 hours of your staff's time creating an automation for it, but maybe in a couple years the platform will grow, it'll actually be extensive and vital to the corporation, and now you actually want to remember why you didn't automate it before, so that you know that you should automate it now. So I said fix their inconveniences first. You've already lived with these issues. These are current issues. It's going to buy goodwill and expedite the process. And then it's going to show upfront that you do really want to help. These are existing issues. These aren't new issues. Even if you just found out about it, it's already been an issue for years and years and years. So is it actually an incident? Is it actually on fire? Or do you just want to notate it, notate the risk level, and then continue onwards? So it's going to buy goodwill, and it's going to create a lot of brownie points for you. You're going to need executive buy-in in order to spend the extra money to get the extra licenses, in order to spend the money to get the automation platforms. You want staff to advocate for you, and so you're going to need goodwill. You're going to need people on your side saying, yes, I'm excited about this. Yes, I absolutely want security to make these changes. And you're going to do that by fixing some of their issues directly, quickly, and up front, so that you can get all these brownie points. And then it's going to help establish trust. It's going to help establish and strengthen the lines of communication. And that's key to this process because as you build a relationship with all these different teams, it's going to help ensure that staff, when they're onboarding clients and they hear about new software or they're onboarding some software, hopefully if you establish a good relationship with them, they're going to think of you and tell you before they buy it, before they get this access, before something happens. It's not going to be 100% effective, but slowly getting better. All right, now the actual business of this project. You've bought some goodwill, it's time to tackle your big risks. You're going to want to figure out what those big risks are and how they apply to your business. And then, in the end, these big risks, making changes, securing them, are probably going to frustrate and annoy people, which is why we bought the goodwill. So, this is the real risk. We're not talking about just what generalized risks are, what risks in the newspapers say they are. This is real, practical. How do these risks actually apply to your business? What's the threat vector for these? How can these risks actually be exploited? If something is a CVSS 9.9, it's in all the papers, it's really, really bad, but you have a whole bunch of controls before any attacker can possibly get to that service, is it actually impactful to your organization? Or is this minor issue that isn't all that popular to talk about, that's only a CVSS 7 or something like that, but it's completely unprotected and it's client impacting and it's right out there to be exploited right now? That's going to be a significantly more impactful risk for you, and you're going to want to focus on those first. So you're going to want to figure out what happens if this vulnerability is actually utilized. Will clients know? That's typically pretty bad if clients know. If it ends up in the papers, that's going to be impactful. You're going to want to figure out if this risk is exploited, is the department just going to have their work slowed, or is the department going to be completely unable to do their jobs? Those are all things that you're going to want to define as you figure out what your actual risk level is. And then you're often going to want to think about things like, all I have to do here is ensure MFA is applied throughout the organization to this client impacting platform. That's a quick fix. I can go out and have someone do that pretty quickly. Maybe I should tackle that a little bit quicker than some other risks. So, human factors. We're all human. Staff are human. This is going to really annoy them. You're going to want to have good communication with them and establish real-world, realistic examples of why these changes need to happen. Because often you can't make these changes without executive buy-in, without budget, without all sorts of things like that. Putting it in real-world terms, especially if you can highlight competitors that had these risks exploited, or similar businesses, or people, maybe a staff member came from a competitor, they were there, they said, yes, that was a shit show, I don't want to do that. And then you're also going to want to put it in terms that they understand. Things like, this is how it's going to directly affect what you do. This is how it's going to break your job and delay your projects even more than making this change will. So, you establish all of your risks, you have all of your inventory, you're going to want to form a committee made up of a diverse array of departments led by a director who maybe has a little bit too much time on their hands. This is going to give stakeholders a feeling of ownership. This is going to create some points where staff can feed information back to you in a constructive manner, and then you're also going to do this forever. So, who makes the cut? You're going to want to figure out a formula for the most critical applications being represented in this committee and the fewest amount of people you possibly can have on it. 12 is unwieldy, but possible. 6 people is ideal. If it's past 12, it's more of a mob than it is a committee. So you might know a really good candidate already, a director plus some executive that maybe they're an SME, maybe they have some critical knowledge, but they don't actually do all that much. It adds some brownie points if they're well respected and they have too much time on their hands, and you can pop them on as the chair of the committee. And then, while you'll want to be on the committee, well, at least someone from security should be on the committee, you'll be a non-voting member because you need to appear impartial. You're going to be giving them information, but in the end, they're the owners of these tools, they're the owners of these platforms, and 99% of the time, they're going to get the final say in what needs to happen. So, departmental buy-in is really, really important because, like I said, they own these tools. They own the budget lines these tools are coming from. So you're going to need to get them on board. This is going to allow staff to feel that they're represented. If they have a coworker on this committee, they're going to feel that they actually have a say in what's happening with these changes, and it's going to make the process a little bit easier. And then when gaps are uncovered, when teething issues go awry, when you find information that you didn't have before and things break, it's also going to allow you to maybe not get as much blame. Because everything's security's fault, but maybe we can add some blame to the committee as well. So, there are a lot of advantages to having this committee. Each department is going to have a representative that can direct and collect teething issues and other information from their coworkers that are using these tools on a daily basis. They're going to have a fairly decent understanding of these tools, and you don't want to go out there, learn Salesforce, learn Snowflake, learn all these different tools. Having staff who, as they work on this committee, as they learn what you define as risks, how risks impact your business, they're going to start developing some security knowledge, and they'll also have knowledge of these tools. That's going to be really useful for gathering information from your staff and giving your staff information about why this is happening. They're going to end up becoming advocates for you and for security. And then they'll also be able to translate staff issues into language that we can understand, because you don't want to learn data science, you don't want to learn marketing, you don't want to learn all these different terms. Hopefully, as these staff spend time on this committee, they'll develop the vocabulary to translate things into something actually useful for you. So, how is this committee going to work? You have your RBAC, you have your inventory. This committee is going to go through it because, like I said, this is a lengthy process. So, maybe it's been 6 months, maybe tools are no longer relevant, maybe software's been dropped. As you go through this, this committee is going to be able to review everything, ensure it's accurate, and they'll probably also find a couple things that were overseen, that were missed, that you can add to all this information. Then, really big point in having this committee is staff can discuss if tools are redundant or not. We have this tool, we have this tool. We have Asana and Monday. Do we actually need both of these? Do we need to pay for both of these licenses? Or can we get rid of them? Well, client requires this platform. We really need to be on it. It's in our contract that we're going to use this platform with them. Okay, well, maybe that platform has less licenses, but we can move over to it, or maybe neither can be gotten. We can't dump either of them because they have one critical feature here and one critical feature here that are both valuable to these different teams. You're going to want to take notes on that. You're going to want to figure out, okay, why can't we dump these? And then maybe in 2 years, as these platforms grow, maybe they both have this critical feature. Maybe now you can dump it, because the less tools you have, the less footprint you have, the less risk you have. And then slowly, as you go throughout this process, these meetings are going to be quite frequent, but as you develop, as you teeth, as this program improves, they'll be dropping off less and less and less, monthly, quarterly, etc. But you're still going to want to have this committee, you're still going to want to keep these meetings occasionally coming, because as staff onboard new programs, these are going to be key times where staff can tell you, oh, hey, I forgot to mention, we're actually doing this, we're making this change, we're dumping this platform. So keeping this committee is going to keep these things in mind for your staff, and it's going to help ensure that as the company changes, you get hopefully a little bit more insight into these changes, and you don't find out that you onboard software platform 6 months ago. So, everyone's favorite part, automation. Everyone's environment is unique. There's not going to be a magic automation tool, magic automation suite. You're going to want to manage your own expectations and those of your executive. And this is going to require actually having staff that have the bandwidth to do this. So environmental uniqueness. Everyone has their own environment, you have your own critical tools, and everyone's environment is slightly different. So you're going to want to ensure that the platform you're evaluating actually works for you. What was it built for? What is it compatible with? And how is it compatible with it? Are you going to need to stand up an EC2 instance in order to have this platform talk to 2 other platforms in order to get this automation working? Or is the automation native to the platform itself? And then, are you going to have legacy tools that can't interact with things that are segregated off the network, isolated because they're running Windows XP? Can you still automate that? Can you automate part of the process that is an employee is onboarded, you know access is going to be needed to this sandboxed platform, so you end up sending an email to the correct person, and now they have the information they need to do the manual task, but you automate the front of it, you automate notifying these people in a timely manner. So there is no magic. There's no one-size-fits-all tool, and I do not recommend tools unless I really know about people's environments, because people's environments, people's work is really, really unique. And every vendor I've ever spoken to about automation hand waves, says, oh yeah, don't worry about that, it's possible, we can do it. If it is possible, I want to see it. I've forced a lot of vendors to admit that it's not actually practical to automate certain things that they promised to us, because I forced them into actually doing a demo of that specific automation between those 2 specific platforms. They're trying to sell you something, so it's fine to make them uncomfortable to demand certain things like seeing something actually work, even if they think that you're crazy asking that. And in the end, you probably won't be fully satisfied with the automations you create, but they're going to be a step in the right direction, and they're going to reduce some bandwidth. So you're going to want to manage your expectations, manage expectations of your executives and of your staff. So executives are going to say, automation, great, we can get rid of all the employees at the entire company, right? No, you need humans. You need people that are able to say, wait, no, this doesn't look right, let me make this change. But automations can reduce repetitive tasks, and they can reduce the overall workload of your staff. But you're still going to want to have humans actually review things as they happen, because maybe this can reduce the rate that you hire staff at, but it's not going to reduce the amount of staff you actually have. So, resource bandwidth. The reason why it's not going to reduce the staff you already have is because you need people to actually run the automations. Automations need to be manually implemented, and that takes a lot more time than any vendor ever wants to say. That requires a lot of time, a lot of bandwidth, because, okay, you wrote out all the logic of how this is going to work on paper. Now you actually have to connect all these platforms into the tool. You have to actually go through, write all these automations, and it's going to be a lengthy process. Even if the automation has some AI that can sniff away and say, oh, these are frequent actions I see, you're going to have to correct that, you're going to have to tinker it, you're going to have to fix things, and that requires someone actually having the bandwidth to do all of that. Standards change, tools change, especially in the cloud. Features are brought on, features are dropped, and you're going to need someone that can continue to do maintenance on that, to continue to fix things as things change. And without a resource having dedicated time for working on these automations, they're going to break, and they're going to cause a lot of trouble. You're going to want this program to be around forever, because a disaster in automations that are abandoned, or if standards are changed and so you're not updating the platform, are going to look an awful lot like you're under attack. Because at the end of the day, if staff are locked out of their accounts, if staff are unable to complete their work because all these automations broke, because the directory stopped syncing, so now everyone has been kicked out of 1Password, and now staff can't get into all these critical apps that they use on a daily basis, that's going to look an awful lot like you're under attack, right? This is stopping work, this is creating a disaster, and what's the point of doing all of this work to automate it if you're just going to end up looking like you're under attack, right? This is going to look a lot like, you know, a bulldozer came in and cut the one data connection into your data center. That's why you're going to need dedicated resources to it, just like you're going to need multiple inline data connections. You may have noticed that this slide deck is pretty repetitive. There's a reason for it. There's a lot of things that you're going to need to keep in mind and to stay patient with, because this is a really long-term project, and this is really more of a mindset shift than it is a new program or anything like that. This is a permanent function of your company because tools are changing, standards are changing, things change. We know that. So we need to be prepared for that, and we need to have the right mindset to ensure that we can maintain this process indefinitely. So in the end, you might want to start budgeting for an IAM team, IAM staff, at least some IAM time. Questions? Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you're going to want to find a key member of that to be a committee member, to be the point person. Because you don't own these tools, and maybe you won't get the budget for it, or it's coming out of some other department's budget. So at the end of the day, security almost never has the final say, right? Especially because execs love to just sign off on risk all the time. All right, well, thank you so much.